Thanks, folks. So this one is restoring aquatic connectivity in Gold Creek, and this is we're applying for the targeted investment funds. Gold Creek, it's probably everybody's so tired of hearing about Gold Creek. You'll see a lot of these slides. I'm sure you guys have seen them all. But Gold Creek is in the upper Yakima watershed, Y 39, all the way to the tippy top of Kittitas County, up at the pass, east slope of the Cascade. Gold Creek is a headwater tributary to Lake Ketchikan. It's the only headwater tributary that supports both spawning and rearing of an ESA listed genetically distinct population of golden trout. Gold Creek has been super important for humans over the years, dating back to our first people. They gathered first foods here. It was a major trading area, being so close to the pass. It was super important for their culture and heritage. Fast forward to more modern age, 1917, we had Lake Ketchikan come in, blocking anadromede. 1950s, we saw a lot of forest thinning, clear cutting right up to the banks of Gold Creek. So we started to see a lot of disturbances in the valley at that time. More fast forwarding to the 70s and 80s, we had gravel extraction, both for the widening of I-90 expansion, but also for the development of the Tweeter Valley home development up in the Gold Creek Valley. I love historical pictures, so I'm going to make you guys walk through a couple of these. 1942, this area looks super cool. I wish I was alive back then. But we see a lot of forest. I have a polygon wrapped around what's going to be the future Gold Creek Pond, this big gravel borrow pit. It was a forested mosaic wetlands, lots of connectivity with their floodplains. Channel was really narrow. 1954, we saw significant more logging, still no development yet, that gravel pond still intact, and the channel is still a little bit narrow. However, in 1975, we see that widening starting happening. We saw extensive logging and road development, and that large gravel pit is starting to be mined for I-90 here. 1986, we saw 750,000 cubic yards taken out of what is now Gold Creek Pond. And we saw extensive widening of the creeks because the forest kind of graveled at that point. Today, it is 90% wider than it was in 1944. I believe in 1944 it was 96 feet wide, and today it's about 181 feet wide, so significantly wider. And all this is limiting bull trout. Again, this is a genetically distinct ESA limited population. This over-widening channel has become disconnected with its floodplain. We have some riprap lining the banks because we have a home development here. We have a levee disconnecting the floodplain with what is now Gold Creek Pond. We have lack of in-stream habitat complexity. We don't see a lot of large wood in this photo. Single thread, not many side channels at all. And what's even more impressive is this channel dewaters from June to October, pretty much every single year. It's really widened, which allows a lot more subsurface flows and more evaporative action. So here's some quick photos of our annual dewatering, July, August, and October, all the same place. This is lower in the reach. I think this is 0.5 to 1, river mile 0.5 to 1. But in 2022, over 2 miles had dewatered. And of course, this is a big issue for our spawning bull trout. It creates a fish passage barrier, but it also is pretty hard on adults and juveniles that are holding. It's straining them, making them very vulnerable to desiccation and predation. As I mentioned, it's got lack of habitat complexity, not a lot of large wood, legacy wood left to fall into the creeks. So it's kind of over widened, lots of cobble, stranding and killing fish. And we don't really have a lot of fish to spare. Fish and Wildlife estimates about 50 adult spawners are left, and last year they only found 8 reds. So the time for restoration is pretty immediate. Luckily, we have superheroes minus the capes, but they do come complete with gift nets and buckets. This is Fish and Wildlife, Midland Fisheries in Yakima Nation. They're serving as a lifeboat for some of this population. They're rescuing fish out of dewatering reaches and then taking them down to LaSalle Hatchery where they're rearing them and then replacing them back into the headwaters of Gold Creek at a much larger size. We also have U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that's doing a lifeboat program Any bull trout they find entrained in the dam, they're capturing and then pushing back upstream. But these two actions aren't enough. It's not going to save bull trout. We really need to work on restoring that habitat. And we have 4 recovery plans here that talk about the immediate action and the priority of Gold Creek for the recovery of this population. We have the Yakima Basin Integrated 10-year plan. We have U.S. Fish's Mid-Columbia Recovery Unit Implementation Plan, the BOR's Bull Trout Enhancement Plan, and of course, the Yakima Bull Trout Action Plan. The actions they actually call out our project is directly addressing. It talks about in-stream and floodplain habitat restoration. We're working on that. Restoring groundwater hydrology, narrowing that channel width, reconfiguring the large pit size, and then filling that small pit. So you're going to see all that in the actions that I'm proposing today. Kittitas Conservation Trust and our partners understood this assignment. We've been working in Gold Creek since 2012, doing assessments, studying the limiting factors, coming up with alternatives, and we are really close to having final designs for all the in-stream work and filling Gold Creek Pond. We hope to have those designs in June 28th of this year. We've invested the collaborative we in this basin have invested over $5.6 million into Gold Creek since 2012. What's super neat is these last 4 rows here. 3.4 million is invested for implementation. So we are ready to start implementing River Mile 2 to 3 restoration. But the goals of this project I'm here to talk about today are River Mile 0.5 to 2. The goals are to restore historic channel width, make sure we need to narrow that up a bit, restore natural flow to Gold Creek, reduce the extent and duration of dewatering, and then increase in-stream habitat complexity. We're going to do this by installing 113 key pieces of large wood structures. We'll excavate 1.4 miles on the western and eastern floodplains of Gold Creek. We'll be filling that small 3 gravel borrow pit, also known as Hellie's Pond. You can see it peeking through the trees up in this picture. We'll remove a 1/4 mile levee that's disconnecting the floodplain from Gold Creek and partially fill the larger 27-acre gravel borrow pit with construction spoils. And lastly, we'll be installing over 15,000 native plants just in the industry. So Gold Creek Valley Restoration has 4 major actions. The first one's fully funded. We'll be doing helicopter wood placement in River Mile 2 to 3 at the top of the Nose Breach. The actions we're proposing today are River Mile 0.5 to 2. In-stream wood, excavating side channels, removing the levee, planting, filling Hellie's Pond, and then using the construction spoils to start filling Gold Creek Pond. We're not requesting funding to truck any material in to fill, but just using fill from on site. Natural Systems Designers are engineers. They have carefully selected 4 different types for this stretch of stream of engineered log jams. Again, we'll be installing 113 of those. And this is a representative of what they may look like. Well, also, as I mentioned, putting in 1.4 miles of side channel habitat. The dark blue line here on the picture shows an excavated side channel. The light blue dashed line is how those flows are going to be dispersed out on the floodplain, rehydrating the water table. The picture on the left is actually from our Kittitas restoration project last year. It just shows a technique of deep planting with the finger. Because this area is going to be very similar, really dry, really cobbly. So we're going to have stalks, riparian vegetation grown up really tall and trying to get those deep into the water table with a stinger. Next action, filling that small borrow pit, Hellie's Pond, using the spoils from side channel excavation at River Mile 1.9. We're going to be returning Hellie's Pond to a more seasonal wetland rather than a pond that it is today. Actions 2 and 4, removing this levee that separates Gold Creek from its adjacent floodplain. We'll have to keep a little bit of that setback levee, keeping the pond in place, but most of that levee, our engineers think we can start dumping in, as well as the spoils from excavating this eastern side channels here. The budget for this is no small potatoes. Again, River Mountain 3 fully funded at 2.8 million. Thank you. We've got YBIP, RCO, and VOR funding for that. This project request is just for that 0.5 to 2. The whole project costs 7.8 million. We're requesting 5 million. You can see the majority of that's for construction, 4.2. We have NSD oversight, KCT oversight. We have some permitting, some letter map revisions that I needed from FEMA, and some A&E costs at 10,000. We also have about 400,000 from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Partners Fund, and National Fish Passage that can work for this grant as well. We have pending requests. We've written grants for 5 million each for Streamflow, America the Beautiful, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, National Fish Passage BIL. So we've written a lot of grants. Depends on how these shake out. We'll start hearing as early as April 23rd for the BIL funds. Whichever grants we get first, we're going to dedicate towards the in-stream stuff because that's our priority. Fully funded, we believe we can do all of the in-stream 0.5 to 3 in 2025. And then we'll work with the coordinator.
Can you clarify? So how much more money do you need now to get to where you need? Is that the 7.8 number?
For in-stream stuff?
Yeah.
Yes, we need 7.4 because we have 400,000.
Okay.
So we need 7.4 to finish all the engineering work.
And when you say in-stream work, does that mean all the creek stuff and then all that's left is the big pond project?
Correct.
Okay.
So
Great.
that would get us all the in-stream planting, all the side channels, Bill Helly's pond, all the 141 engineered log jams.
And then all that's left is the big
hole.
pond project. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thanks.
This project would also benefit the local community by deflecting flows away from these residential areas out onto the western floodplain. We can give them a little bit of buffer from flood events. Rehydrating the soils will also create a buffer for wildfires. Returning this area to more of a mosaic of wetlands will produce a diversity of wildlife and flora fauna that they don't have now. Gold Creek Pond, although it's very beautiful, people get married there, it is very sterile. It's really deep, 60-foot deep, doesn't have a lot of amphibians that can rear there. So putting this back to a wetland of this graphic would really have a much, in my opinion, a much more enhanced wildlife and flora fauna experience. We're going to replace the ADA accessibility, so we'll still have the same essence recreational potential. Still cross-country skiing, hiking trails, ADA accessible bathtubs. It also provides climate change resiliency because we are replacing natural processes here. There aren't a lot of, they are human made, but they're natural systems. We're trying to replace that natural system process. And then recharging this groundwater aquifer will help reduce the conflicts with our water users and the treaty trust resources that's going on up there, and re-engaging those floodplains will help store water longer. We want to see more habitat like this. This is our desired future condition in the bottom. Less habitat like up top, very simplified, over widened. We want to see a bunch of wood, hopefully lessening that duration and extent of dewatering, having more gravel sorts, and a lot more cover. And we couldn't do this without a ton of partners. I almost had to make 2 slides because we have so much amazing support for this project. It is overwhelming. So huge thank you to our partners and supporters. And quick blurb, I think most of you probably already know, the EA, the draft EA is out right now. Comments end, I think, May 3rd for this project. So hopefully we'll have a decision this summer for the actions of this project. And that's all I have.
Okay. Questions?
I had a question about the plantings. I know Mitch has talked about a lot about the fire hose effect coming down Gold Creek. Are the plantings going to be in the lee side of the log jams? Is that the idea, or?
Yeah, kind of protected from with the log jams, right? And it was really, well, I wish I had a picture of it. Kittitas, we did a really cool, we walked out our plantings and our construction crew at the same time. So we planted in, and then the construction crew was able to put wood on top and disperse. So those plants have little micro habitats.
Yeah.
Otherwise the structure is being completely built and then trying to drill in plants it just wouldn't have been as successful. So having that marriage of working together and finishing the log jam after the planting worked out really sweet.
You mentioned map revisions. How are you dealing with NORISE and FEMA? Does it,
It's a work in progress. We're having some conflicting, we've had several meetings with the county. And this is a really unique situation because we're in this A zone, but there's no existing models to go from. So what we were told was, yeah, we'll use our models are better than anything FEMA has. And that would get us out of doing a CLOMAR. So we would just be required to do a letter of map revision after every project. So after all the in-stream work was done, we would do a letter of map revision. It's very unclear if we are tied to that 1 foot rise, because being in an A zone, the way they're interpreting it, we're not. But we're trying to really talk directly to FEMA folks, because we're not really getting clear answers.
and you have 1 foot rise, you also have the no rise in the floodway, or in the,
Yeah, we're working through those now.
Yeah.
Yeah, more answers to come on that, but we've definitely been trying hard to get those answers.
And so, you mentioned expecting to know from one of these in April. What are the timelines for the others?
Fall.
Okay.
So we should know September and I think November are the other ones.
So if you got a bunch of these, are those grants set up in a way that you could put the money toward the pond?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah, we tried to write a lot of flexibility in those grants, especially stream flow. We felt like that was a really good project that we, it's all about water. So we could actually say filling the pond is not more important, but for that pot of money, it seems like a better fit to really rely more on pond filling.
okay.
So we've written these grants pretty flexible, that we can move money around as we need.
So if Surfboard says yes, and you get 5 million from Surfboard should not be expecting a refund if you get some of the others. Is that fair?
Say that again?
So if you get the 5 million from Surfboard.
Yeah.
You're not gonna end up giving that 5 million back if you
No.
get some other grants. It's just gonna be reprogrammed into those
Exactly.
funds. Okay,
Yes. Yep, our priority is in-stream work first.
Got it.
Right, so, but we'll hear from Surfboard at the end of this year, September, November, or January at the latest, right?
oh, early.
well, no, because this is targeted investments. So you'll hear from us how it ranks to send to the state, and the state will by August or early September, we'll have a ranked list. We won't know, there's 25 million available to start down that ranked list if the Climate Commitment Act isn't overturned in November. So the earliest, in November, if you are near the top of the state's list, you could be, and Climate Commitment Act wasn't overturned, you could feel like we can get this money in January. If you're below the 25 million line or the CCA disappears, then the list is going to go to the state legislature in the spring of 2025. And then you won't know if they fund it and how far down the list they fund until April, and you're unlikely to be able to contract until after July, August or September realistically. So you'll have some indication where you are in September by where you're sitting in that state rank list relative to all of this. But you won't have any certainty until either November or next April. You would have April, typically the budget's out and you'd know they're gonna fund us in July.
Yeah, but we do have a lot of flexibility with these others. I also should mention that we put in full project requests from CWI, US Forest Service, another forest big project list, I can't remember the name of it, we put in 50 million, so that would be for the bridge reconstruction as well as this. And then we put in for the US Fish and Wildlife Services big project list of 36 million. So one of those come out of the air, we would be fully funded for this project.
But let me ask a question, kind of like the discussion we had with John about how to package these things. So if this is set up in Surfboard, what you're doing now, and it's just the creek, if you don't end up hearing until summer of 25 or spring of 25 on this, they would have potentially already contracted for the creek, if you can build the creek in 25 with that other money. That, is this true? That wouldn't then leave them flexibility to move surfboard to the pond? What I'm getting at is, do you want to build this ask so that you have the flexibility to go to the pond in case you find out late? If you follow my
That was
question.
our original intent. But we were told that might not.
For
Right, well.
surfboard, having a clear scope that's evaluated as such matters a lot, which is why our recommendation was focus on the in-stream, which there are a few things going on. The in-stream, the pond is not as far along in design, so it doesn't meet the design level at this time. And the pond is still entirely dependent on the NEPA analysis. It's not complete. This project can be done under the NEPA, or it could be done through programmatic EAs and other things. So for giving surfboard a clear thing of what they're evaluating, both Elizabeth and our local recommendation was focus here. I get what you're saying about covering the pots, and that would depend if you really think you can do 25 construction of this. If you're looking at 26 construction, you can still shuffle monies with the other grants that may be more shuffleable. So that, I would leave it to you guys about whether you think 25 construction is feasible. The challenge is it gets a lot harder for the surfboard to rate something on and if.
Yeah.
And this being big pots that are going to be up against competitive things statewide. But yeah, it's
I see what you mean.
I'm trying to think through
I
strategies.
would think our tag could get through it. I mean, because the tag would. It seems with what we've learned about Gold Creek for the past 12 years, the pond is the big holy grail. And I would, it wouldn't shock me within the basin if we would conclude, if we like this, we like the pond even
And
better.
the other challenge is surfboard is really reluctant to partially fund large things when there's no certainty on fully funding it. So here, this gets you most of the way to the in-stream, whereas 5 million in the pond, which, maybe 20 million, maybe 40, quite honestly, there's still a lot to be determined in those cost estimates. Surfboard is very hesitant to be the first 5 in. Now, if you got far enough that by the time you were talking about shifting monies, that you were 2/3 of the way there, surfboard certainty that this project is going to happen with our monies within the 5 years before they turn into a pumpkin goes up. So, yeah,
Maybe it's a
there's a
good
lot of
plan.
strategizing in
Try to
both directions,
help.
and it's something, it's not a closed door, so.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the discussion on it. It's tricky. We just hoping a lot more money rolls in and we have, we're starting to identify more fill sources, so that's feeling more attainable.
No, I have a question about the pond fill. Is it would it be more beneficial to reconnect that pond basically? Cause it looks like there's kind of a side channel that comes off of Gold Creek and goes into that pond. If you reconnected it back into Gold Creek and then only had to partially fill it.
They looked at partial fills and it wasn't enough, so that pond is acting as like a siphon. And there's also a network of, I don't want to say, culverts and drains, thank you, drains draining out of the infrastructure. And they looked at different alternatives, of like a partial fill, a full fill, and they came up with this of doing most of it, but leaving some of that. We want a little bit of reflection, we want to restore like the scenic values, people really love this pond.
Cause it looks like that channel out of it goes right down through the houses. So if you filled it in, essentially that would cause more water flow through the houses, right?
Which channel are you looking at?
Yeah, I'm not
It's
sure.
the channel that goes right through the pond here. It goes down through the houses.
Oh, you're looking at Helly's pond.
Oh, Helen's
Talking about Helly's.
Lily pond, yeah, not the big
Helly's
pond.
Will be filled all the way. Yeah,
So will that cause more water flow through those houses at the way that water flows down through there?
They have a whole network of drains that,
Wow.
you know, we haven't really been able to investigate. We haven't had permission to look
Yeah.
into those drains and.
The line you're seeing is actually a natural channel. It's an old stream channel. Helly's Pond is just a part of an old stream channel. The Helly's Pond and that channel you see were excavated by an excavator to make a levee that prevents water going down that channel from coming into it. It's not an engineered levee. It's just a landowner bill. I don't know whether it was permanent or not levee. So, and there have been landowner concerns about that flood protection element. The bigger in-stream project, a big part of the concept is to take a lot of the flood water off to the right, so it's not
Yeah.
flowing down that channel to the left. But to my knowledge, the design doesn't explicitly address that old levee that's there.
Mitchell wrote, working on 90% designs right now for the pond, and NEPA is on a pathway to decision.
Yeah, as I mentioned, June 28th, we'll have full pond and in-stream designs, and we'll have tag review. I think you guys all have calendar invites already.
Elizabeth wrote, we worry about the political challenges still to be navigated for the pond. We need preliminary designs and NEPA. We need to see the project is ready, so I think come back for pond money once the other big grants come in and there are preliminary designs and there's permit pathways.
Thanks for that, Elizabeth.
And when she's referring to political, the main concern is this does include a 10-year closure of Gold Creek Pond, which is one of the more advertised and well-used, short ADA accessible hiking trails in the state. So this question right now in the comment period of the NEPA, there's great support for the project. There's also, we don't know what we'll see in the NEPA response and how Forest Service will ultimately respond. We're hoping it's good for the project.
Yeah, and 10 years is a long time, we recognize that. We're hoping to really surgically get all this restoration done in a shorter amount of time and just allow a lot of healing, a lot of that vegetation to restore before we open it up for recreation. We don't want to be delaying our restoration actions. We want to have time for this thing to heal.
Any more?
Is this the last segment KCT is planning to do on Gold Creek, or is there future phases?
The only future work, so this is pretty much everything of the Gold Creek Valley. Sorry, there we go. These are the actions to restore the Gold Creek Valley project. Habitat upstream is in fairly good shape. So this is our major area here. There might need to be some maintenance. We have partners that are gonna monitor this site until bull trout are recovered. So there might be little things we need to do to maintain a large root structure or maybe a failed planting. We're gonna be keeping up with the Forest Service botanist, making sure we're on top of the weeds. Really, there's gonna be a lot of collaborative, but these are our main restoration actions here.
So there's one other piece of the puzzle, which is this right here where this creek comes in, that's where the drains
Yes.
that come down, they almost connect Gold Creek physically with the lake. They drop the water table 10 feet. They suck the water out of Gold Creek and deliver it at high velocity down to the pond. They're on private land, which is why the Forest Service is not doing NEPA on them. They can't. In my humble opinion, and I did a little groundwater model to test this, filling the pond, obviously stopping the rate of leakage out of the channel itself has to help because it's a sieve. Filling the pond would help because it drops the water table 10 feet and provides an outlet for all that drain water. But then the other thing is pulling the water table back up where it belongs. And when I modeled it, in order to de-water it, I started with the natural condition and I de-watered it with the drains.
But yeah, there could be acquisition proposals, there could be work either with a private landowner or after an acquisition on the drains. And the other big one that is out here is the Forest Service wants to redo where the Forest Service road crosses to match the wildlife and floodplain conveyance that the I-90 bridge has gained. So right now you have a narrow little bridge right upstream of the big I-90 open that they just built. And that is another large project. It's as much probably wildlife as fisheries in its benefits. Those are the, remaining big things people talked about.
Way more wildlife than fisheries.
And going back to the acquisition, we have reached out to Starwater, they Evo recently purchased this property. And, you know, we could pursue conversations with them about what could be done. We had a gentleman meet with us and he's like, yeah, tell us, you know, we just don't want our properties to flood, right? They want to maintain their buildable footprint if they're permitted by the county, but perhaps there's opportunities in the future to work with some of those landowners or a new acquisition could come up. Lots of partners have this high on their radar for restoration and acquisition.
Elizabeth added a comment. It's great to see the progress being made on Gold Creek. Will be easier to clear surfboard tech review once that work is complete and you've paved the way to fill the Gold Creek pit, including having other big grants secured.
Absolutely.
Anyone more?
Well, thank you so much, folks, for listening to yet another great presentation. We do appreciate it and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks.
Thanks.